Donald Rumsfeld, our esteemed Secretary of Defense this weekend, has started saying some things that, or I guess I should say continued saying things that are absolutely ludicrous, but I think he's sort of crossed the line of ludicrosity
Nice
this weekend.
word.
Thanks very much. Thanks. And what he did say, one of the things in an opinion piece in the Washington Post this Sunday, he wrote an article about what we've learned in 3 years. And apparently Don Rumsfeld has learned nothing in 3 years. He's saying that if we leave Iraq, this is a quote, turning our backs on post-war Iraq today would be the modern equivalent of handing post-war Germany back to the Nazis. Now, we had crushed the Nazis. There was nothing to hand them back to. We had beaten. We had taken over the enemy.
And first of all, before you get into that, which is very, very true, and that's the first thing I thought of, and apparently Kissinger agrees with us. We'll get to that in a second. But the whole supposition is false. And what I mean by that is, he's still saying, oh, if we leave Iraq, it'll be like handing it back to the Nazis like in Germany. So it'll be like handing it back to Al-Qaeda, presumably, and the terrorists. But that is not the war we're fighting.
Al-Qaeda wasn't there.
And he
We're going to
continues.
hand them back to those Saddamists.
The rationale, this is Don Rumsfeld, for a free and democratic Iraq is as compelling today as it was 3 years ago, which means it's mildly compelling at best. A free and stable Iraq will not attack its neighbors.
By the way, I got to stop you there.
Yeah.
Okay, because
Thank
Bush said it in the speech today. He said, democracies don't have a history of war. Right. Except
us!
We're a democracy.
Yeah.
And you're the one who started this war. What do you mean democracies don't have a history of war? Does no one get that irony?
It's absurd. Will not conspire with terrorists, will not pay rewards to the families of suicide bombers, and will not seek to kill Americans.
Now,
It's just assumed that if we get a group in there that's responsible, which we've had no easy time doing, that none of these things would happen.
By the way, the Baathists, the Saddamists, as they call them, who used to run Iraq, did not conspire with anyone connected to Al-Qaeda. In fact, Al-Qaeda was fundamentalist. The Baathists, for all the terrible that they were secular. They were fundamentally opposed. But someone who did conspire with a terrorist state, and again, reported by Fox News, reported by every news organization, but only reported once and then dropped by everybody else. But you can find it on our website. You can find it do a Google search. Don't trust us. Find it from any news organization you like. Dick Cheney, when he was the CEO of Halliburton, set up a subsidiary for Halliburton inside Tehran, Iran, to do business with Iran, who we at the time called a terrorist state. So maybe we should do a preemptive strike on Dick Cheney.
By the way, it's something that I'm sure Dick Cheney was going crazy about when Bill Clinton pardoned Mark Rich for doing the same thing. I mean, Mark Rich, that was what his problem was in business. That was the blemish on his record. And I'm not saying that he was an angel, Mark Rich, but again, Dick Cheney lives in the glassiest of all houses. So what we heard was Rumsfeld say those things, or we read them, and then of course, as you had mentioned, Henry Kissinger came out and said that this is ridiculous. In Germany, the opposition was completely crushed. There was no significant resistance movement. So it's not at all like doing that. Zbigniew Brzezinski, who was the NSA, the head of the NSA for Jimmy Carter, said that is really absolutely crazy to anyone who knows history. There was no alternative to our presence. The Germans were totally crushed. For Secretary Rumsfeld to be talking this way suggests either he doesn't know history or he's simply demagoguing.
I love Brzezinski for saying that.
Yeah.
Because people have to say that more. When the president says stuff like this, when Rumsfeld writes things like this, you've got to say, wait a minute now, are you that profoundly ignorant, or are you messing with us? Is this a political game you're playing, or are you really this stupid? Because, look, at the point that they made is a very, very important one, so I want to put a little emphasis on it. We crushed Germany and Japan. We did 2 nuclear bombs on Japan, okay? We wiped out Hiroshima and Nagasaki, let alone all the fire bombings. So there was no insurgency. There was no resistance. They had an unconditional surrender. And they had already lost almost all of their army anyway, right? It wasn't, and in this day and age, for a democracy to go to war, they have to understand, either we're going to crush people mercilessly, which is what democracy at this day and age don't want to do and shouldn't want to do, or we realize we're going to have to contend with an insurgency that eventually will win. Because we cannot occupy a country and hope to be a local insurgency who lives there. We didn't learn that lesson in Vietnam, And apparently Rumsfeld still has not learned that lesson in Iraq, 3 years into the occupation. And they had the genius, idea today. They said, oh, what? Look, Talafar worked. So what do we do in Talafar? We had enough troops to control Talafar. Yeah, if you had enough troops to control all the cities, you might be in better shape. But then you might need 500,000 to 1 million troops there. Instead, you do go in half-ass and make it an entire mess, which you have absolutely no hope of control.